Chapter 3. The Bird. The next morning, the boy followed a well-worn path. Often he stopped to rest, for breathing the damp air was tiring for him. Yet for a child of the open plains, he adjusted quickly to the low light and the rich greens and browns of the forest, with the rare flush of red of new leaves and the continual voices of the birds. Only the occasional snake dropping from the trees to the path in front of him was a reminder that he was a stranger in a foreign land. Ooh, snakes. The boy stopped to listen to the call of a bird he did not know. Without warning, the rain came. For a long time he stood still. He closed his eyes and felt the soaking rain and rejoiced with the song of his people. The rain fell gently but steadily in the forest, and the boy decided to take shelter. Close to the path, he found a large tree. At its base, roots overlapped. He rested in the protection of the massive tree and listened to the sound of the rain. He imagined single drops sliding down large leathery leaves, suspended for an instant at the green tips, and then falling like tears to the damp ground. Like the cradle songs mothers hum to their babies, the song of the rain comforted the boy. He thought longingly of his home. The rain turned to a fine mist. He dozed. Suddenly, he was awakened by the distinct call of a bird. "Akuru! Tuku, tuku, tuku!" On the ground was the most beautiful bird the boy had ever seen. Even in the low light of the forest, its feathers reflected the color of the sky and water. The boy moved his hand to the pouch that hung around his neck. He traced the shaft of the storyteller's feather inside. He did not have to look. He knew the feather had come from a bird like this one. The bird moved quickly and nervously in the boy's direction. It cocked its head to the side and looked at the boy with a bright eye. Then it turned and flew a few feet away. The bird repeated these movements several times. Finally, the boy said to the bird, "I think you want me to follow you." The rain had stopped and the forest smelled of rich earth. The bird flew a few feet ahead of him, and the boy followed. Although the bird always remained just out of the boy's reach, it never allowed him to fall too far behind. Finally, the bird broke into a clearing and landed on a high wall. The boy gasped. They'd come to a village. Suddenly, the bird threw back its head and sang its beautiful voice. The boy was afraid. A villager might see him. He picked up a rock and thought to silence the bird. But as he did, the bird's song entered the boy's heart. He lowered his arm, and the stone fell to the ground. From the other side of the wall, the boy heard the noises of the villagers. Of all their sounds, he only recognized one: laughter. The bird stopped its singing. In a blur of green and blue, it was gone. Suddenly, the boy felt alone. He withdrew to the forest, but stayed close enough to hear the comforting sounds of the village. That night, as he rested in a large tree, he listened for the people. He heard the sounds of singing and dancing and voices of drums. But there was also a new sound. He leaned forward and tried hard to hear. Yes, it was the gentle sound of rain. He looked up. Through a break in the forest cover, the light of the moon shone. Although the boy could hear its voice, no rain fell from the sky. He shivered. What a wonderful and powerful people. They had captured the sound of the rain. The next morning, the boy woke to a great noise in the forest. The birds in the treetops did not sing with their beautiful morning voices, but shrieked with harsh, raucous calls of alarm. Pounding the tree branches and lashing the leaves, the monkeys screamed. For a long time, the boy cowered close to the trunk of the tree until finally the forest was quiet. It was as if a great and terrible storm had passed. I bet he was really scared. The boy slid down the tree. Today he would go to the village. The mist was heavy in the forest, like walking through a cloud, he thought. But nothing moved. Nothing spoke. Approaching the village, the boy sensed that the people were gone. He scaled the wall and dropped down on the other side. The village had many huts that were shaped differently from the ones that he knew. Where were the people? The fire burned under the cook pot where a thick liquid bubbled and popped. The boy stood before the door of a hut and looked at the many things strewn on the ground. Bowls, spoons, woven mats, a mask. He quickly looked away from the people's mask. Next to the mask, he saw a long, straight tube lying on the ground. His forehead wrinkled in thought. He studied the strange tube for a long time, slowly stretching out his hand as if the tube was a living thing that might strike out at him. He touched its rough surface. Nothing happened. More confident, he picked it up and cried out in surprise and joy when he heard the voice of the rain. A single blue feather was attached to the tube. There it is. When he tipped the stick sharply, it made the sound of a heavy rain. And if he turned it over very slowly, the rain fell softly, as if dropping from leaf to leaf in the forest. With this instrument, the boy could carry the sound of the rain back to his village. He looked around. He couldn't just take the instrument. He fingered the bag that hung around his neck. The storyteller's pouch had been a great comfort to the boy on the journey. He removed it from around his neck and placed it at the door of the hut. He could not have known that the bag would mold and rot in the damp heat of the forest. The people of this village would never return. Turning his face towards home, the boy followed the path through the forest. He would take this back to his village, the sound of the rain and stories of the place that the rain visited. Surely his father would be spared. Glancing at the rainstick, he thought of the riddle the storyteller had given him. A slender staff touches earth and sky at the same time. The boy smiled into the trees, the snakes, the insects, the leopard. He said, "It is the rain. The slender staff that touches earth and sky is the rain." As the boy tipped the rainstick, its voice blended with the song of the rain in the forest, in time with his hurrying steps. The end.